Welcome to the Keith Noble Show, brought to you by Auto Chicks and the Nobles Financial Network, both of which you can find on Facebook. Let's talk today about this fraud thing. Lawsuits have been filed by the Trump campaign. And what are reasonable expectations there? Well, reasonable expectations are they will have no effect on the outcome of the election. It's not that it's impossible, it's just that it would be unprecedented to do that. So if you're a Trump supporter, you need to temper your expectations. But this is why it's important to untie these two issues, voter fraud from the Trump campaign and the election outcome. We need to defeat voter fraud, regardless of what happens to Trump. If he's elected or not, that's not as important as honest, fair elections. So, as I've mentioned before, you have these cascading questions. Was there fraud? Was the fraud sufficient to swing the election? And what is a viable, plausible remedy? And on top of that, you have, is the court willing to do anything about it? And when you put all those four in there, the chances of victory in a election fraud case are almost nil. So let's ask those. Did we have fraud here? Yes. That is objectively indisputable that there was fraud. Did that fraud swing the election? We don't know. That's why there should be an investigation. However, we're on such a compressed timeline here between certifying ballots, certifying the vote for each state, sending electors to elect a new president, all those things. Chances of it being conclusively proven in the compressed time frame are not good. However, again, this is why we need to separate the issues, because fair and honest elections matter. So if the argument is we're not going to pay attention to election fraud because we can't prove in this compressed time frame, we will have election fraud with us forever. And in fact, we've had it with us for a very, very long time. This is not new. Maybe the scale being accused is new, but election fraud is not new, not in the least. So, who doesn't want honest, fair elections? Who doesn't want a system where everyone who is legally entitled to vote gets to vote? That vote, they are assured, is counted, and no other votes are counted. Well, we have a considerable number of people who don't want that. And the reasons they don't want that is because they would not win, number one. Number two, it raises a lot of questions about their past validity of elections past. It raises validity about laws that were passed by people who maybe shouldn't have been elected without fraud. It raises it goes down a rabbit hole a lot of people do not want to go down. But I think we need to go down it. It's worthwhile to go down it. It's worthwhile to make sure everybody who's legally entitled to vote gets to vote, and those votes are counted only once, and no other ballots are counted. This is really simple. Of course, the people who are opposed to that are typically the people who will thump their chest and say how important democracy is. Well, democracy isn't very important to you if you tolerate election fraud. Let's just be clear. So, where do we go from here? Well, we keep dogging this issue. Even if Trump loses his legal challenges, as I'm highly confident he will lose, we keep dogging this issue because we can't afford to keep doing this. It rips this country apart. It's overwhelmingly the most popular response when people who don't vote is they don't believe their vote would count or matter. Well, who can argue with them if we have election fraud? That's the whole point. We need to deal with this. And we need Democrats on board to deal with it. I don't have much faith we're going to get Democratic politicians, but Democrat voters, people who voted for Biden, you should be on board with this. Because you know what? They're not just stealing the vote from people who voted for Trump or voted for a Republican for the Senate or the House or county commissioner or whatever it is. They're stealing your vote too. Understand that. That's what this is. Stealing people's votes. If there's 10 votes and somebody has 6 to win, and maybe it's not your guy, but they had 3 more or 2 more, so that their guy wins, it's stealing your vote even if your guy won. Get that. Understand that. And you think, well, my guy won this time. What if your guy doesn't win next time? And I'm not implying here that the fraud was sufficient to swing the election. We don't know that yet. But the claims of there was no voter fraud, that's just preposterous. And that's why this gets to keep going on, because so many people vote and say, well, there's no voter fraud, there's no proof, there's no evidence. There is abundant evidence and proof. Statistical proof, anecdotal proof, signed affidavits. You need to look at it. You need to consider it. Because if you don't, even though you think your guy won, you will rip this country apart, and eventually it will come around to bite you too. I promise that. This is the time and the place and the opportunity to fix this. And you have to disassociate it from the election outcome, disassociate it from if Trump won or not, because the election fraud issue is much more important than who actually won the election this year. Because if we don't fix it now, there's very little point in voting going forward. So, thank you for tuning in. Look up Auto Chicks, The Nobles Financial Network on Facebook. It's worth your time. And look up my book on Amazon, Our Dogs Did Not Bark, A Politically Incorrect Dystopian Tale. If you really want to know where progressivism goes, that's the book to read. So, thank you so much. See you.